So anytime you're out on the river, no, this isn't an epic video. Why are we using the epic video intro? No. Alright, fine. Hey, what's up everyone? It's Lance. Welcome back to Pesca Vida. Today we're shooting a bit of a different video. We're going to be talking about the history of Pesca Vida and then roll into a rod showcase towards the end of the video. So here at Pesca Vida, I'm not just about fishing, but I also really enjoy building fly rods. It's something I've been doing for the past 4 or 5 years now, and it just kind of adds to a bit of the channel's content and what you can expect to see in the future coming from me. So, brief history. I started building fly rods in the winter of 2016, right as none of the fish were biting and it was getting really cold and everything was basically frozen over. I was sitting bored at work one day and I looked into the process and I said, how hard could it be? So, kind of jokingly almost, I ordered up a blank and all of the components needed to build my first fly rod. I think it was a 9-foot 3-weight that I ordered up. And all of the components showed up about a month later because I ordered them from AliExpress, which takes way too long to show up. And in the meantime, waiting for all of these components to show up, I grabbed a couple of pallets from the Ace Hardware I was working at and some spare nuts and bolts. And I looked up on YouTube how everyone else was doing it, and then I kind of built and created my own little setup that I actually still use to this day. My first fly rod was absolute garbage, of course. The handle was not well put together in the first place. I bought a cheap handle, I bought cheap components. The fly rod was basically your Walmart special, but it caught fish and it was pretty cool. I remember the first tiny brown that I caught on that rod. It was really cool. And a couple of my friends had caught word that I was building fly rods, and I was actually kind of telling them, hey, I've got some really cool ideas. If you're willing to work with me on this, we can make it happen. So the first fly rod that I built that really kind of put me into the zone of wanting to build fly rods more often was a Rasta rod for one of my buddies here. And the way I built this rod was I ordered 3 different colored blue halo blanks, and I ended up splitting the rods up with 2 other guys who wanted kind of the similar color scheme. And I ended up paying a premium because I got the actual Rasta colors like red, yellow, green right in order. And I worked on that blank. That was the first one that I actually spent a bit of money on, especially with the components too. I used Pack-Bait guides, which are some of the nicer guides you can get. And after that one, I was like, all right, this is cool, this is fun. This is like a way for me to, create things and feel artistic in some sort of way. The types of rods that I usually build are either fiberglass or carbon graphite rods. I have not yet built a bamboo rod, but it's on the roster. It's coming down the pipeline one of these days. But for now, if I'm building a rod for somebody, I'll either offer them a carbon graphite option or a fiberglass option. And I would say I build on both of those materials pretty equally. And I'm definitely not the only custom rod builder out there, especially if you're on Instagram. I'm sure you've seen at least one of V-Stick custom fly rods. Another option is Grey Wolf. Shane does some amazing work on the rods that he builds. There's Ben fly rods, Yamame fly rods. If you go on Instagram and search custom fly rod, you'll see a bunch of options. Probably some of mine too. With all of these custom rod builders, everyone has their own style or their own flavor that they traditionally use to build rods, something that's kind of indicative of a rod being built by that person. So for me, I really like to use acrylic within my handles and my fighting butts on my fly rods. That was something I started doing a couple years ago with acrylic sheets, but we all know now that resin acrylic is a little bit more customizable and I can actually make the components that go into my handles. I use some special materials in the ferrules to give it kind of a hyper color shift change. And the ferrules hold up just as well as they would epoxy with thread. I have a buddy who's had one of his custom rods for a couple of years now and the thing still rips. So just because materials are changing doesn't mean you can knock them right off the bat. I know some of the older rod builders would never put anything but thread on a fly rod, and I get that. There's a sense of tradition there that I totally respect, but I like to do things a little bit more funky. I like to use bright colors. I love to build on blanks that are colored, whether it be graphite or fiberglass. I think that adds to the overall aesthetic of the rod. There's so many different bits and pieces on a fly rod that you can customize to make it look exactly how you want it to look. And just a note, All of the fly rod builders, including myself and some of the others that I mentioned, use the exact same components as some of your upper end fly rods like Sage or Thomas & Thomas. The components are pretty much orderable by anyone. Anyone can make a rod as great as Sage. You just have to use the right components. And obviously there's a sliding scale. If you're making a budget rod, you're not going to be investing in the nicest reel seat or the nicest guide style. So there's definitely a couple of precautions you want to take before ordering a custom fly rod. The first being that a lot of custom fly rod makers are not able to extend a warranty to you. So if a warranty on your rod is something you need, I probably wouldn't choose a custom fly rod. You also have to consider the time required to build a fly rod. It's not one of these order and then within 2 days it's out the door, unless that is someone's full-time job. For me, it usually takes a week of ordering the materials to get them to my place, and then another 2 or 3 days of actually building the rod. Depending on the components too, some rods take up to a week to build. Just something to consider if you're in the market for a custom fly rod. So that's a brief overview kind of the custom fly rod market right now. I don't think there's too much competition in the market either. If you chose any custom fly rod maker, they'd be stoked. There's not exactly a rush to get the most orders in. I think all of us are expressing ourselves more creatively through building fly rods, which I think is one, the appeal of building fly rods, but two, also the appeal of ordering from someone that you know builds a fly rod in a certain style. And I've still got plenty of fly rods to build on my desk. So with that being said, let's talk about the fly rod that I'm showcasing today. This is a 9'6" weight that I made for one of my buddies. It's actually going out to his girlfriend, so lucky her. IM6 blank, for anybody that knows IM6 versus IM8 versus IM12. This is an IM6 blank. It's a glossy green color, kind of a dark green. And so the aesthetic we were going for here was a blue, purple, and green kind of color combo. So what I did with the handle is these two smaller inserts are completely transparent purple. The end caps on the end here are mixed in with a little bit of holographic pigment. And then the fighting butt is holographic pigment with duochrome pigment mixed in, but again using less pigment to keep it transparent. It's a whole mouthful. You'll see more in the detailed shots coming up. But this is a 4-piece blank. It is a super solid rod. I've built a ton of these before and they hold up exceptionally well. And then on to the actual sections here, you can see that green color continues on through. The wraps I did in a dark purple and I epoxied them with a purple tinted epoxy to give them a little bit more depth of color, but it's not color blocked like you may see on some rods. So the color of the thread does not exactly match the color on the thread when it comes off the spool. The epoxy changes the color a little bit. And on the end here, you can see that color shifting material I use for the ferrules. It keeps them nice and bright so you know where your connection points are, and I just think they look awesome. This one changes from a green to a blue to a purple depending on the angle you're looking at, and I think it matches the rod exceptionally well. And just a word of caution out to all you people who are saying, don't slap shiny stuff on your fly rod, you're gonna scare the fish. If you're worried about the fish being scared with your fly rod before your presentation or the fly you're using, you're probably not gonna catch many fish in the first place. All right, that's it. Let's cut to some detailed shots of this rod. Alright everyone, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do. It's right below the video. If you like the video, toss in a thumbs up. And if you're interested in a custom fly rod, let me know in the comments below what comes to your mind. I'm always looking for new inspiration for builds that are coming down the pipeline, and I would love to build you a rod too. Feel free to contact me, I'm always around. Alright everyone, till next time, we'll catch you later. Peace!